Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Well, I'm out here once again working on our 1970 Plymouth Superbird clone, and as you can see, we still have a ton of metal work to do on this thing. We've got rear quarters to do, we've got trunk pan floor, we've got front floor sections, inner fender, and a whole lot of other stuff that I'm not mentioning. And this is just to get the metal work squared away before all of those awesome Superbird parts get put onto the car. But in today's video, guys, we're going to focus here on getting this front portion of the rear deck filler panel done, the entire bottom window channel essentially completely rotted out of this car. Now, I have jumped ahead. I did the exact same repair, exact same way on the Ratty Saddy, my 1968 Plymouth Satellite. So if you guys want to see like fully in depth of how I got here, go and check out that video. But I really cut out all of the bad. We've got a beautiful new piece here, and on this car we also need to do these corner pieces, which a lot of you guys showed a lot of interest in, and I've never had to do these before, but looking at it, I've got a plan I hope works out, but we'll get to that here in a minute. But I have cleaned up everything. It's all drilled out, ready to plug weld in. We've also got a beautiful and super tight butt joint all the way down as well. So really this piece at this point can be welded in. Now, with the only exception, I am going to leave the portion right here where this corner piece slides underneath. We're going to leave that unwelded for now. Before I weld that in, I will go ahead and fit check the quarter panels when we get to that point, because this is actually kind of a reinforcing pocket here that sits underneath of the quarter panel, and it's actually underneath of that deck filler piece. And essentially the quarter panel actually rolls over the top and it sits on top of that corner piece. So you got to make sure you get this right, and if you're too far up or too far down or back side to side, it's not going to fit right and your quarter panel is going to fit like shit. So what I want to do, I kind of marked it here with my fancy purple Sharpie. I'm going to leave this portion right here unwelded. We'll weld the side in, we'll weld the entire butt joint in, but we can still lift up this corner here to slide this piece in and out. We'll drill it in place with the quarter panel and get it exactly where it needs to be. But yeah, that whole thing is ready to go. That corner as well, completely rotted out, and I've already gone ahead, surface prepped everything underneath, so it's all in weld through primer. The bottom side of this rear deck filler piece is also covered in that zero rust material to prevent any rusting from happening in the future. Now, I say this is the easy part of the job. Let me show you guys what's really got me a little bit scared, and that is these outer rockers. Now, believe me when I say this is actually the good side, and you know, we only have to section in the back third or so of the damn rocker, but no, typical Mopar rust, guys. Water creeps in here, sits inside, and then anywhere where there's lapped metal or metal that just sits on top of each other, it's just a natural place where these cars just completely rust out. So you guys can see all this metal sitting here. This is actually the outer rocker pieces that are left on. Of course, we still got to burn out the dog leg and the lead that's in the front of the quarter panel, but it's all bad. It's all really bad. But I imagine I'll probably end up just sectioning in from here back. There's no sense in jeopardizing the structure of the car or really messing with the front half or wasting a whole lot of time on that. It's actually in really good shape. Only have a little bit of scale on this back hole here. So worst case, we'll go ahead and swap that out, but all this rust right here, up the jam, all that stuff gets swapped out when I do the quarter panel. So that's pretty much it with that one. Now, passenger side, completely different story. The entire thing is pretty much roached out front to back, and it will all need to go. So there's really no saving this. You could do a million patches on it if you want, but again, why jeopardize the structure of it when we have some really good parts from AMD, and yeah, they're awesome. I swapped these out on multiple cars. They're absolute works of art, guys. You guys know the story by now. I mean, the right length, the right bends, the right shape, the right parts for the right job, and yeah, they're here and pretty much ready to go. So all that I'm going to do to these, really prep them out. We'll drill a bunch of holes here in the bottom, or punch them out rather, using my Eastwood punch flange tool, and we'll coat the insides of these and make sure that there's no issues in dealing with rust again in the future. So yeah, pretty sweet stuff, and I know I make it sound probably a whole lot easier than it actually is. There's a lot of time coming up in this video to get these parts swapped out. So enough talking, let's go ahead and let's weld in that rear deck filler panel. Alrighty guys, so I got the upper piece of the deck filler all wrapped up. It's all ground down with a 60 grit flap wheel, and it turned out really nice. I'm really happy with it. Maybe a couple tips or suggestions. Number one, take your time. Flat panels like this, quarter panels, you know, anywhere really susceptible to warping, just make sure you kind of skip around, cool things down, and just take it easy, take your time. I did leave this corner pieces unwelded like I showed you guys with the plug welds, and that is really just to be able to get these corner pieces in and out of here so that way we can fit check everything before we put on the quarter panels, because what a lot of you guys may do is try to line this up right here with the deck filler, but these corner pieces actually have to sit further inboard so that way the quarter panel can wrap over the top and then be flush with that. So you could definitely save yourself a whole bunch of work by doing it this way. Just leave them out, leave them loose. We'll go to test fit everything up, drill a couple holes, have it ready to weld in, and we should be good to go from that point. But aside from that, guys, I don't know if I would go any more aggressive than a 60 grit on here, just for the mere fact that you're dealing with very thin sheet metal. You don't want to go too far, and especially for you guys that have heavy hands with grinders, you might want to go with like the 180, the 220 maybe. But I really don't push down very hard on this. Let the tool do the work, and the results kind of speak for themselves. It looks really nice. So from here, guys, it's time to move on to the scary stuff. I'm going to go ahead and get the car lifted up, get all of those old pieces of quarter panel off the bottom of the or the back side of the rocker, and let's see how much of this thing we're going to have to cut out. Let's get to it. All right, so I've got the lead seam all burned out, and I wanted to point out a couple things to you guys. First and foremost, I can't tell you how many hours I've spent trying to line up this quarter panel dog leg with the rocker, and you know, it's really frustrating. You always want a really straight line here, but you know, you always hear bad issues with factory fitment or how sloppy the factory was, and you can really see here that the lead's gone, how big this step is on the quarter panel from the factory. This has never been taken off. This is all original stuff. And that fitment right there is probably at least a 1/4 inch off, if not more. Actually probably closer to like 3/8. But To compensate for that, all the factory did, they booger a bunch of lead over the top of that, and if that's not good enough, then they throw seam sealer over all of that, paint it, and send it down the production line. And now that it's all burned away, you can really see how sloppy that is. So we're gonna get a little bit better fitment than that. You can really see it compared to the door line, you know, how much tighter it is in that corner compared to this, what, 3/4 of an inch gap or so here at the bottom without the lead in there. So it's a big gap. But we'll get a bit better fitment than that. Go ahead and lead the bottom of these and make it look as seamless as possible. So from here, a couple more spot welds we got to drill out. Probably going to cut the quarter panel up to about here or so, so that way we have good access to slide the new rocker piece in. And I tell you what, unfortunately, now that I have this opened up, we got bigger issues here on the bottom, so I think that we are actually going to have to cut quite a bit further forward. I may even go up here in front of where this door jamb piece is, just so that way we've got a good reference point to where we can cut and line up everything. But we just want to make sure that we get into all good metal. And I guess really this trim hole right here is probably the only questionable one of the lot, so it does make more sense to actually come up here to the front and cut that away and then replace this whole back section. Alrighty, you guys, so you probably noticed this video is a little bit different than most. Unfortunately, I had my camera in slow motion mode the entire time I've been recording for the last several days, and then to make it even better, my memory card was corrupted when I just went to go edit all of my video footage. So unfortunately, I lost a whole bunch of this install, but I am gonna walk you guys through and show it to you in detail. You know, I swear, the more complicated I make my setup with video and audio, trying to make it better and better, the more issues I have. So maybe we'll simplify it and go back to using a GoPro again. But man, super frustrating. So the good news is the car is done. The rockers at least are done, drivers and passengers. So you guys can see here, this side sectioned in, really nice. I will do a very light coat of bodywork over the top of that, but overall the body lines matched up really well. You will notice the gap looks huge towards the back. The reason for that, and you can even see here the door is raised up, but with this being a unibody and it's also on the lift and there's an engine in it, so it is a little bit nose heavy, so the car does flex. So that said, do not, and I repeat, do not fit everything up and weld it all up without putting everything at ride height, because there's going to be some flex. Okay, so when I fit up all the panels, especially the passenger side rocker, because I did that entire rocker, everything was done on the ground, you know, as the car sits. You know, you can't really do it at ride height without the rear axle in this thing, but having the wheels on the back actually let the car settle a little bit, and so that's how I set my door gaps, that's how I set everything. And you'll see here in just a minute when I lower it, we can watch this door actually slide right back down to exactly where it's supposed to be, and it will tighten up that gap to be almost perfect across both sides. But yeah, everything lined up really nice, you guys. You can see here the wheelhouse. Now what I like to do, because there's a million spot welds for all this window structure here, as well as the roof structure panel, so I actually just shave those all the way down. I lay it flat over the top, and I'll actually just weld it to the car like that. And I mean, it's, let's say, a 1/16 of an inch off, which nobody will ever notice the difference there. It won't change the fitment of your quarter panel at all. So I like to do that to make it a little bit easier. And also you can see up here, I mean, just how good the fitment is with all the bracing, everything lined up really well. But there will be some trimming here on this back side. You guys can see the holes are kind of lined up, but I think that they make these kind of the spine pieces here a little bit bigger intentionally, because even across the top, it's a good 1/4 inch too big. So I'll take a permanent marker, kind of trace this all the way around, trim all that out, and then it'll fit really nice. You can see there's kind of like a recess in the inner wheelhouse there, but pretty much from about 1 o'clock all the way down is where that recess is at. So we'll be able to fit that nice and tight and pull these in just a touch more, but they'll be nice and finished at that point. Now, with everything kind of fitting as good as it is, you'd think, yeah, now you should weld in the wheelhouses. Well, don't do that. I made the mistake of doing that before without test fitting the quarter panels, and it resulted in me having to cut out a wheelhouse and redo the whole thing, because you may have to move it forward, back, up, down, just a little bit, depending on the fitment of everything, how it all goes together. So I like to kind of pin it all in place. It's held in place right now with just a couple tech screws, and everything is kind of pretty much in the ballpark of where I think it's going to stay. You can see here on the inside, the inner wheelhouse kind of wraps over that. This will actually get welded to the outer wheelhouse when the time comes. But no, everything turned out really nice on this side. Now, this is probably what I'm most upset about, and unfortunately you guys aren't going to be able to see it, but this entire passenger side rocker panel came out of the car. So everything you see me do on the driver's side, do the exact same thing on the passenger side, with the addition, of course, of the front of the A-pillar post and the door support piece there. It's all kind of the same stuff, you guys. You drill out the spot welds, you slowly work your way around. The air chisel really helps get everything out, but just be slow, be deliberate, take your time, and it'll turn out just fine. But another thing here too, I mentioned the ride height. Make sure you're test fitting, especially rocker panels, because as the car settles, the fitment's going to be just a little bit different. So I ended up putting these wheels back on the car to fit it all on the ground at height. And you can see here, kind of same thing as the other side. The gap's a little bit tall here at the back of the door, but in a minute I'll put it on the ground and you'll see everything settles out everything lines up really nice, and we have really good fitment across the entire rocker panel to the door. Same thing here. I do still have to hammer this support piece down a little bit. You can see just with the drill bit and also with the air chisel, things tend to get a little bit chewed up, so a little hammer and a punch, kind of straighten everything out, line everything back up, and we should be good to go at that point. Same fitment issues here on the back side of the wheelhouse, so again, trace that out, we'll trim it up after I fit the quarter panels to make sure that everything is exactly where I want it to be. Now, a quick glance here, the front of the rocker panel, you guys can see the cap is reinstalled on there. Also have all these door pieces all fit up really nice. I ended up welding the front of this completely solid, clean that all up. But yeah, I'm really happy with how everything turned out. All of our bracings back in place, everything is coated on the inside of the rocker, and it should last as long as this car lasts, because it's definitely put together a whole lot more sturdy and with a lot more rust prevention in mind for this car, so that way it doesn't rust out on them down the road. All right, now I've got the car back on the ground here. Just wanted to kind of show you guys how the doors and everything else lined up, and you guys can see how much these doors have actually settled. So body lines pretty much spot on at this point, and you can see here towards the bottom how much tighter that door gap ended up being. So another thing to note too is that the quarter panel will also wrap around to kind of about right here or so it'll even tighten that up even further. But overall, really, really good fitment here on this side. And again, looking at the passenger side, this one was the scarier of the two for sure. But you can see here, as I open up the door just a little bit, how everything kind of lined up there, as well as across the entire rocker panel to the door fitment. So really happy with it overall. Still, of course, needs some final metal work, some final body work to get everything exactly where it should be. But at least now we know that the door fitment's good to the rocker. The door fitment is also good to the quarter panel, as you guys can see. And it's time to get ready to cut even more metal off of this car. And with that, guys, the rocker job is pretty much wrapped up at this point. Of course, still got to epoxy everything, gonna clean it all up, do a little bit of body work before I send this thing down the road, but really the job's just about wrapped up. At least all the heavy sheet metal parts are wrapped up. So at this stage, I was thinking that I would jump straight in, do the floor pans real quick. We've got those patches, of course, here in the footwells on each side, but the doors are on. Kids come home today. I don't feel like getting any dents in any doors, so we're gonna go someplace that they really can't dent for me, and that is the trunk pan area. So still got the trunk drops, of course. Whatever's left here of the old trunk pan needs to come out. But what's exciting about this, with the quarter panels blown off the car, is that the entire trunk pan goes in one giant piece, and it's a huge, huge change all at one time. So, and at that point, can then fit quarter panels and get closer to wrapping up this job. So with that, guys, if you haven't done so yet, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope in the next video I don't have near the level of technical difficulties, and I hope to have my life together by then. So you guys get to look forward to that and a little bit more in-depth DIY on rebuilding this 1970 Plymouth Superbird clone. So until then, take care. I'll see you all again real soon.